What's your story that no one believes? As high school seniors, my best friend and I were failing English. The last day of school, when everyone else had gone home, we had to stay and take a test that would determine whether we graduated the next day. While we were taking the test, the teacher was called on the intercom to come to the office for an emergency phone call. Needless to say, we started cheating the moment that she stepped out of the class. But not long after she left, we could hear her running down the hallway with a clicking of her high heels. She opened the door and said, "If you want to pass, come with me." Her husband was out of town and his prized bulls got out and were on the highway. We spent the rest of the day chasing bulls on three-wheelers and having the time of our lives. And that is how I graduated high school. That sounds amazing lol. Sounds like a lot of bull. Angry upvote lol. Watched two blind people walk right into each other on a street in New York City. They both seemed confused. Took a step back, shuffled sideways in opposite directions, and continued on without knowing what happened. Oh holy shit. I saw the same thing from a bus window and actually told the whole bus to watch because we were too far away to yell it to them. Funny. I was watching from the window of a clothing store while my friend was shopping. I saw it about to happen, but wouldn't have been able to stop it. I was so stunned that I didn't think to run out and tell both of them what had happened. They even had walking canes, and the way they moved to the side opposite of each other side prevented the canes from touching. Craziest thing I've ever witnessed. A few years ago, a big llama would show up out of nowhere the same time every afternoon for weeks. It would run laps around my house and me if I was outside, and then it would disappear again. Nobody believed me. My friends were convinced I was playing the long game when it came to some weird prank they didn't understand. I knew nobody believed, but I kept talking about it anyhow, because when a big llama shows up and runs laps around you, you gotta tell somebody, because it's too weird to keep to oneself. I later learned that someone living nearby rescued a llama from a farm that couldn't care for him anymore. He built a pen for it way in the back of his property that wasn't visible from the road, so nobody saw it when passing by his place. The llama learned how to open his pen and would let himself out when the owner would leave at the same time every afternoon. He'd cut through the bushes to get to my place, run around, go to the neighbors, run around their place while they were at work, run home, and then he'd let himself back into his pen and close the gate before the owner returned. The owner only figured it out when he forgot his wallet, returned home, saw the llama in the yard, thought the gate was broken, and went to go shopping for parts to fix it. I bumped into him and we started chatting, and then suddenly everything made sense. Edit. Thank you for the awards. OMG, this is adorable. When I was in high school, we'd drive across the river into Oklahoma and party at clubs over there. One night a guy I went to school with was giving me a ride home. We got stopped by some deputies, so he handed me his ounce of pot to hide, so I put it in my pants. They put us in their patrol car while they searched his car. I thought we were going to go to jail, so I poked the ounce of pot down their back seat. The sheriff drives up and told his deputies that we were just a couple of kids to just go ahead and let us go. Fast forward to the very next weekend, my girlfriend and I were hitchhiking, back when you could hitchhike, from the same club to another club, and these men in a marked car picked us up and said they'd take us to where we were going. I got in the back seat. One of the men looked at me and said, "You look familiar." I said, "Yes. You stopped me and a friend of mine last week." Suddenly I remembered the pot I put in their backseat and thought, OS, he's going to question me about it. As we continued talking, I nonchalantly put my hands in their backseat and felt that pot and slowly and quietly put it in my jacket pocket. They drove us to our destination and let us out. I got the ounce of pot back. True story. Exact thing happened to an ex-BF of mine, lol. It was less than an ounce. But he also successfully managed to avoid charges and retrieve his weed some days/weeks later from the back seat. I saved someone drowning once while everyone wasn't looking. The girl that I saved never said anything to anyone because she was too embarrassed to say that she couldn't swim. I never got any acknowledgement for it, but it's okay. One day on not guarded beach on Pound I, M20 then, was learning to swim on my back. Firstly I checked the water and it was waistline, so safe to learn. Spoiler, it wasn't. After some time on my back I decided to go back. Tried to stand and boom, I'm underwater. I was doing my best and managed to get few gasps of air, but was already preparing to die there. I was thinking that this is really stupid way and stupid time because I just get great girlfriend, now my wife, and great 420 paying job. Then somebody lifted me and asked if I'm drowning or fooling around. He dragged me few meters to water shallow enough to stand. He saved my life. I thanked him. He said no problem and left. Sadly I was so shocked that I have no idea how he looked like. So I'm thanking you instead, GJ buddy. I wanted to try out for the Olympics in 1996. I knew what I was capable of. I calculated every movement, every split, down to the hundredth of a second, and figured out I could make it by 0.05 seconds. I wrote that time on my wall. I needed to shave off over 4 seconds to make that goal. I wrote that time in big letters and posted it on my bedroom wall. Every morning I woke up to that time. On my 15th birthday I made the finals and I got the exact time that I had written on my bedroom wall. I went to the Olympic trials. I made the exact time, down to the hundredth of a second. I didn't make the Olympic team, but I got the exact time I knew I could do on the day that it counted. Task failed successfully. At 32, my 4th boyfriend died. 4 separate men I've dated died before I was 33. I didn't kill any of them. I swear. They died 4 different ways. The last one was my soulmate. I seriously wonder if I'm the angel of death sometimes. With everything else I've been though, I wouldn't even believe someone who told me my story. Gosh, I'm so sorry to hear. That's a lot of heartbreak to go through so young. My dad is weirdly similar. He's had something like 7 partners die on him. 4 of them developed cancer. 1 got hit by a car. 2 just passed away randomly. Either heart attacks or aneurysms, I'm not sure. I make dark jokes about him being irradiated somehow. Has anyone made sure your dad isn't radioactive and simultaneously resistant to the effects of radiation or something? 6/7 from cancer or random health complications seems less like a curse and more like maybe there's gotta be a specialist out there who studies this. /view 200d6 people. 6. After prolonged intimate exposure to your father, either he's really pissed off Aphrodite, or there's something going on here, or both. Conversely, maybe he's one of those people who can smell illnesses, but it's subconscious, and he's drawn to it. I watched a few episodes of a show on TV and thought one woman was particularly charming. Definitely the most attractive to me on a show with a bunch of attractive women. 2 years later I moved to a different city, met a woman that was very attractive and had something about her I couldn't put my finger on. We went out a couple times. It turned out she was the same woman from the show. I'm experiencing a non-romantic version of this. Thought I might be courting a client, but maybe it's my creative partner. I have an aristocratic title from a defunct European monarchy. I live and work between Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. I knew a baron in Bavaria who was trying to recruit a woman to marry and have a child to continue his bloodline. Yes, recruit. Dude was a complete jerk, which was why he never got past second dates. But he has old, falling apart books that traced his bloodline back to Charlemagne, and he and all of the nobility still have parties and secret not so secret balls and gatherings. I even know where he lives, if he's still there. Also know someone who went to Volksschule elementary school in Vienna with the princess and duchess, although the titles were meaningless. One day I was walking at sunset in my family's ranch and saw a cat while walking up the hill to the house. I of course did the unthinkable and picked it up and put it in my shoulder like a baby as it was a bit heavy and then walked to the house. It was kinda dark, and when I got there my grandma and grandpa, I believe an aunt, and can't recall if my mom see me with a bit of a shocked face. It was a bobcat. The bobcat stayed around a bit after I put it down. We gave it a rib. They had killed a pig earlier and were baking some ribs with adobo. Amazing. And there it went happily. The bobcat kept coming back. I did not feed or pick it up again. Nobody believes, so I don't even tell it. But it 100% happened. Cat distribution system legendary drop. If only I had awards to give you. I grew up in Palo Alto and loved computers. There was a shop I'd go to and hang out almost every day because they had a really cool computer. One day they had a flyer printed on colored paper at the door looking for investors to grow the company. I took it home to my mom and told her to give them money because it was the best computer and I loved their symbol. And I thought everyone would use it if they knew about it. She said no and ignored the flyer I brought home. The computer company was Apple. This is the kind of story you tell at parties and everyone just stares like, yeah sure dude. It sounds kind of similar to Forrest Gump when he had money invested in Apple. I live in Austin, TX. I'm a night shift veterinary technician. In 2020, during the height of lockdown, I was behind our hospital one night at 4 AM walking a patient, a big bloodhound that had just had abdominal surgery. We were taking our time while he decided where to pee. I saw what I initially thought was a stray dog walking down the railroad tracks behind the hospital, maybe 20 yards and a chain link fence away from us. As it moved into the pool of light under a street lamp, it lifted its head and gazed at me, and I realized a couple things in quick succession: that I was looking at a mountain lion, and that I was standing alone in the dark with a large, injured dog. He never broke stride or slowed down, just gazed at us silently and kept on moving. It was a kinda foggy, still night and the entire experience was just so atmospheric and utterly bizarre. Absolutely no one believes me, but that's okay. I believe you. I don't live in the US, so don't know the likelihood of mountain lions being in Austin, but I've seen a wild lynx here in the UK, where they're not supposed to exist, and no one believes that either. Was casually walking by a lake when a duck coming into land flew right into me. I was doubled over and the duck looked dazed by my feet. Then it quacked super loudly, bit my leg really hard, then went off into the water. Nobody believes me that a duck flew into me then took revenge. Duck version of that tree jumped out in front of my car, probably should have duck tbh. Not my story. My sister's. The main road of the town we grew up in had an old train track alley that ran parallel to it. The back doors to the businesses were on the alley side. No train had ever come down the tracks, at least not in a lifetime. She came home one day saying her and a friend had walked down the alley, and in back of a Chinese food restaurant there was a bunch of animal traps. A flock of seagulls were pecking away on the ground around the traps. Eventually, one went in the trap. The trap slammed shut, and a moment later, a guy came out of the back door to the restaurant. He grabbed the whole trap, seagull inside it, and ran back in. As C's told this story, I laughed hysterically, but my parents didn't. They tried to shame my sister, accused her of lying and promoting racist stereotypes. It got to the point where she was in tears and pleading, "I'm not lying. It really happened." A few days later, the front page of our town's newspaper ran a story about the restaurant getting closed down by the health department. The article stated there were allegations the restaurant was using locally caught wild game. That was 30 years ago. My sister never let mom and dad hear the end of it. The time she said the absolute truth and they didn't believe her. I was expecting a ghost train, not fried seagull. I saw a kid in preschool throw up during lunch. Threw up on his plate, lap, everything. The in-house cook guy came out and scolded him and forced him to eat from the plate and wouldn't let any of us get up or leave the room until he mostly cleared his plate. I think like a decade later they were shut down for abusing children. My mom didn't believe me until she saw it on the news. Bless her heart. This is horrifying. Oh man, I don't even know where to begin. I accidentally locked myself in the trunk of my own rental car earlier this year and spent 40 minutes stuck before a FedEx driver found me. May I ask, how? Some friends and I were in Egypt in 1993, and we managed to get a long taxi ride to the next village for half price by driving the taxi ourselves while the driver slept in the back seat. Having spent time in Egypt, that's not even remotely implausible. I have many. I've seen a drunk British girl's head catch on fire in an Indian desert. I've sung anthem to a full house at the Royal Albert Hall, and I was once kidnapped for 3 hours by Kurdish separatists. But the one story no one ever believes is when I found a sock containing £1,000 under a false bottom of the closet in my dorm room, which I'd already been living in for almost a year. Never did find out whose it was. But my main theory is that it belonged to the guy in the room 3 years before me, who was a son of a Saudi businessman, and he simply forgot his stash of cash when he left. It had been in the closet for all that time until I dropped my economics textbooks on the closet floor and the false plywood floor cracked. For context, this place had students from all walks of life and had a strict maximum on how much cash students could bring. It was collected by the school and dispersed weekly as pocket money. So a lot of the richer kids smuggled in extra money. Edit. People seem baffled that that's my least believed story. So I added my answer to one of the commenters below. Enjoy. I think that's the least believed one, because that's the whole story. I found a bunch of money in a sock in a hidden compartment. I don't really have any more details than that. I can't even remember the color of the sock. Green. The girl in India. Now that's a proper story. I was at the tail end of 6-month overland trip by Bedford lorry. Think pink buses but no frills. Sit on a wooden bench in the back of a lorry. Sleep in tents. Through the Middle East. Then up from Iran. Through Pakistan. And into India. Same trip where I was mildly kidnapped by Kurds in Turkish Kurdistan. Oh. And also was chased by the Hezbollah in Lebanon. We were just heading towards Nepal for the last leg of the trip and considered ourselves experienced travelers. We were probably really obnoxious when we met another group coming the other way at a desert camp. They were only on their second week and very clean. Also very young and a bit I'm on my gap year woo-why. While my group was a bit older, I was the youngest, at 23. Anyway, in the evening there was a big bonfire party. My group was a little bit to the side, because we hadn't really had alcohol for some time, coming out of Iran, Pakistan and the dry parts of India. And also we were used to going to bed when the sun went down. So we mostly just people watched as these just out of uni twats made fools of themselves. To be fair, I was also a just out of uni twat, but by this stage I was experienced. Lol. One of the girls was wearing a long turban around her head, and as she twirled around the fire, it came loose and dipped onto the ground, where it promptly caught on fire. Just a small flame, mind you, slowly crawling up the dangling fabric. She didn't notice at first, but then her boyfriend saw it, and this utter fool started blowing on it, which of course just made it burn faster, climbing up her back and finally reaching her hair, which started smoldering. So then he panicked and just tipped his drink all over her head, except his drink was mostly vodka. And her head erupted like she was the Human Torch. I'm ashamed to say I was just completely frozen to my seat by our fire 10 meters away, just not believing my eyes and going, what the actual fuck? That girl's on fire. But luckily Sumo, our formerly professional rugby playing driver, literally flew out of the darkness and tackled her to the ground and buried her head in the sand. Thanks to Sumo, she got away with her life and mostly second-degree burns. They said the alcohol paradoxically protected her skin, and one small third-degree on her back where the fabric kinda melted to her skin. But she looked like a burned partly plucked chicken, and that was the end of her grand adventure.